when you were growing up, did you feel that you were being exposed to new experiences all the time?
Oh, absolutely. And, I feel like whether it's true or not, I feel like before I could walk, I was digging around in the dirt on the kibbutz or like we were on the riverbank. And, I feel like we were, in many ways.
Did you feel that was just natural? I mean, that's what kids do, or were you extraordinary?
It felt very natural. And I would say that was, you definitely took on that role of being the Scult camp counselor. And camp was called life.
I'm Jeffscult. I have been on the healing and revealing journey, following my thread to my inner gold. My great honor in life is to sit with the golden ones and discover what they've released in terms of their past stuck stories, what they've revealed in terms of who they are anew, and within that, how we can each celebrate the art of living life golden. Welcome to Drops of Gold.
Hey there, Golden Ones. This episode of Drops of Gold is powered by One Golden Thread, the regenerative nature fashion brand that I created from my mind's eye that we can all live in regenerosity. Enjoy the program, and we've got a special code for you later on to share. You are golden. We are all connected, better together as one golden thread.
All right, welcome to another episode of Drops of Gold. This one, I'm looking forward to getting to know somebody for the first time.
Hope so.
For the infinite time. Morton Meyer Scult, the OG of Jeffscult.
That's very
Drops of Gold.
That's very flattering.
Well,
the only person who ever called me Morton's my mother when she wanted me to get straight on something.
Is that right?
Yes, Morton. Otherwise, it was Morty.
Really?
Yeah.
How many other nicknames did you have? You had Morty. You had Mort. Well, Mort is the short name. But what other nicknames did you have growing up?
$3 bill.
So one of a kind.
That's one way of putting it.
What was that really one of your nicknames? Or
yeah.
Are you making is that no, your nickname?
No, there was an incident that happened at the fraternity house, and I was trying to pull something off on somebody, and said, "From now on, you're going to be called the $3 bill."
1 in a million.
Yeah. Well, it was not. It was a derisive commentary.
Okay, so $3 bill, Sporty Morty. I call you Sporty Morty.
Oh yeah.
What else we got?
They called me late for dinner. If that's what you mean. That was it.
Okay. All right. So if the listeners are having challenges distinguishing which voice is which, it's because one of my greatest gifts that I didn't even realize that I was gifted until I was on Mark Shapiro's podcast, Are You Being Real, in 2016, when I got to actually hear my voice truly for the first time.
Right.
And because we had headphones on, as we do now, for those that are listening. And I just had this realization, two realizations. One was that I was gifted my father's voice. And
really?
Two was that I don't mind listening to my voice, because I never liked listening to my voice as I was just speaking it. Mm-hmm. That was one of my own stories. Do you realize that you've got an extraordinary Winston Churchill voice?
I did not know that. So you listen to yourself sometimes. Do you? Hope you enjoy that.
I do.
Uh-huh.
I do. So I want to get. Let's start where we start. So I think you have had an extraordinarily colorful life. That I think we were talking the other night about this notion of the hero's journey. Where the hero on their own journey, however they describe their journey, there's there's moments where you're stepping forward. There's moments that you actually are faced with the real challenge in your life. There's moments that you actually move forward. There's moments that you need to push through something else to obtain, a degree of joy, happiness, contentment, fulfillment. And I will just say that, my observation of you is like you are living your best life right now. You are in a state of peace and presence, and you've maybe let go of whatever, and you're in a state of joy. And so I'd love to actually hear first by saying, like, what does life feel like for you right now? Because you've got infinite time left to continue to do what you're doing, and I just would love to hear how you feel about life right now.
Well, I think that as we age through each decade, it's always a good question to ask yourself: is this the way the life is going to be for the rest of my life? Do I look at things differently than I did? And they always talk about the golden age. They're not talking about this golden age, but they're talking about, aging. And it is a mixed blessing. It's hard to be around those that you love that are no longer. That is constantly around, and it's also a constant reminder. But the reminder, at least for me, is not how sad and disconsolate that you can be about that. It's more about how precious life is, and as I say, don't sweat the small stuff. Of course, it's your determination as to what the small stuff is. Like, I had lunch with my brother-in-law, who's about my age, and I said, "So, Budge, what's bothering you right now?" He says, "God, I got to take this driving test." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, but I can't get my computer to work so I can study for it. And I may have to take this test without preparing it. And God, I can't believe I could flunk it and find out that I can't drive anymore." And he didn't just talk about that. That was the subject of 2 hours of discussion, and how uptight he was about taking this test that thousands of people take in California and other states all over. But that's his latest trauma. And so I said, "So how's everything else?" "Well, everything's fine, but this driving test is just driving me. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what." I said, "Well, what happens if you flunk it? You can take it again?" And he said, "Yeah, but I've never flunked anything." And I said, "Well, welcome." So I think that's the realization. And I think we're living at a very difficult time in the world. We're living at a very difficult time in our country. There's a lot of things that we have taken for granted for years and years and years. I think the people of my age who have lived through the Second World War, the Vietnam War, Afghanistan, Iraq, and all that. So we've had a lot, and we've had depressions, and I think it's admirable as to how resilient people are who have been through those experiences. When you look back on it, and how it affected you personally, and yet, notwithstanding that, it depends upon how you handle it and how you look at it and how you look at the future. And of course, the most important thing about the future are the people that you surround yourself and look to them for support and encouragement and solace. So
how
do you look at that?
I mean, what I receive from that is the power of perspective. To have perspective on I mean, I remember what your mother, who continues to be one of my favorite human beings.
You were hers too.
I received that. And one of my favorite things that she would say is, and I still draw on it, not always with perfection, but perfection is ridiculous anyway. So, but she would say, whatever you're concerned about in this exact moment, 365 days from this moment, propel yourself forward. And if you think that 365 days from now you would look back and be able to even remember what you were upset about, it's not yours, let it go. So, yeah, I think that it's a lifelong practice of surrendering into letting go. It's a lifelong practice of having perspective. And, I'd love to ask you, what are some of the true watermarks in your life that gave you that perspective to have the patience and the purpose of being a positive human being for yourself and for others? I mean, what were some of the aspects? Because we talk about this hero's journey. This isn't like just a book. It's real. And I think about your childhood. It was you had an unexpected childhood with some of the things that occurred. And I could think that one thing, and I'll let you speak to what steeled you in that perspective to be able to see life through that lens.
Are you making reference to the fact that I went through that period of having polio?
I think that certainly was one of the things that, if you look back on your life, you would say that was an unexpected, twisted gift that came out of it, to say, like, I'm determined not to miss a grade of school, which he didn't. I'm determined to do what I love, which is go deeper into scouting without, and get the merit badges, with everybody else. So I'd be curious to know if that was born out of that hardship, like, there's that expression, which is like, steel forges steel, right? We get to be resolved through some of the things that are hardship.
I don't ever remember the word hardship. I really didn't. I think the only drive that I had when I had polio was to be normal again. Now, you can call it a drive if you want. And what did that mean is that I was 12 years old, and I was not picked for the grade school baseball team because I couldn't lift my arm to be able to swing a bat. And that really upset me, because I think if anything, I wanted to yearned to be normal, so that I would not be singled out to be unusual or that I needed to have a special assist or anything like that. So, fortunately, through, let's say, the impetus of my mother and supported by my father, they got me into water, the pool. And notwithstanding the orthopedic doctors I was going to, who was getting ready to fit me up with leg braces, I remember I looked up at my father, started to cry. It's the first time I'd ever seen him crying. And so I turned to him and I said, I'm not going to have those. And so I worked like hell in the pool to get to the point where I was able to walk. And not only walk, but strengthen the muscles to the point where I was able to go hiking and backpacking, etc., etc. But it wasn't the concept of, oh, woe is me and hardship. It's just the fact that I wanted to be normal, and normal for me meant I could do whatever I wanted to do. And so, and the other thing about it is that if you think back, Jeff, on the people in your life that have made you turn into a different direction or look at things differently, you could probably identify those people by name. And I think probably one of the people in my life that made my life that way was the scoutmaster that I had that impelled me onward to continue to do what I did, and end up getting an Eagle badge and some palms on top of that. But it was he that convinced me to go to scout camp when everybody else there, of course, had not had polio all I wanted to do was to do what they did. And it was, there were moments when I couldn't and didn't, but I didn't discuss it with anybody. That was just an internal desire to want to do that.
What was his name?
His name is Eddie Schneider. He was in the firecracker business of all things, but I was selling fireworks. Yeah.
Do you remember anything he said or somebody else that was inspiring to you? Words that really landed, that were inspiring?
Not specifically. It was just his attitude. I mean, we didn't have long lectures where he would lecture me about this and that and the other thing. He just said, we're going to get in there and get it done. Even to the extent of, I think it was one merit badge, which involved water safety, where you had to learn how to pull somebody else ashore and swim with them. That was very interesting, and in my heart, I knew that I wasn't doing what really was required, but I did all I could, and I got the merit badge in spite of it. By comparison to others, I'm sure it was probably subpar, but anyway. But I think it's a support that you get throughout your life. And by those people, I'm sure you can think of those people in your life that have made a difference. And 2 or 3 people. And
I love the fact that tell the story about the teacher that was so supportive of you during that chapter of your life.
You know, somehow, I don't know whether she was doing this with others, but she would come to our house after school and deliver all the stuff, the homework and the books that had to be read. And I was determined not to miss a grade. So she was pretty helpful and encouraged me to continue. And she said, if I'm doing what I'm doing, you got to do what you needed to do too to get through. And so I was able to stay up with the class and graduate early.
So fast forwarding, you grew into a quite handsome young man.
That's your opinion. I wasn't 6'5", and I wasn't Mr. Muscle Man, and
well, you brought the goods because you seem to attract the attention of the opposite sex to you. And there was a moment on a blind date. Maybe you can shed some light into in terms of what transpired with. So the backstory is there's this guy named Harvey.
Harvey.
He was trying to squire this super beautiful woman from Beverly Hills called Arlene Offer, and Arlene wanted no business with Harvey. And Harvey finally kind of threw his hands up and said, well, look, if you're not going to go out with me, why don't you go out with my friend Mort? Now, she had no interest in really meeting Mort, as the story goes, but she just wanted to get Harvey off her back. So
little did I know.
So it sets the state, that sets the container for the first date that lasted 6 hours and what have you, and led to. Why don't you tell the story about the where, the when, and what was said within the first 10 minutes?
Well, she, knowing Arlene, who was very forthright, after about 20 minutes, she said, I'm having a good time. And I said, so? And she says, well, when Harvey told me about this, and besides the fact that he also told me that you were leaving tomorrow for San Francisco, what the heck would I want to do this?
This is in Phoenix, or this is in
This
LA?
is in L.A.,
Okay.
and I invited her for lunch, and I wasn't making a lot of money at that time, but he sort of told me, he says, she really likes nice things. So, of all things, I took her to the Polo Lounge at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I won't even tell you what the bill was, but after about 20 minutes, she said that. And she said, I'm just getting over a cold, and I also want you to know I didn't even take a shower and I wore stockings with a hem in them. And she says, because I was trying to be determined not to like this event at all. And I was just doing this not even as a favor, but as a dare with Harvey. And so we sat there for 4 hours. And at the 4 hours, I said, something, this is a different woman. And she's somebody who has not only a very interesting way of sense of humor and doesn't seem to take herself so seriously. And to confess all those things that she confessed in the first 15 minutes, I thought was a big deal. And so I canceled my plan for San Francisco, and she had to cancel a date or two. And then I think 4 weekends we were trading back and forth, or my coming to L.A., and then she came. I said, do you want to come to Phoenix, see what it's all about? And her mother heard about it, and she said, don't get involved with somebody from Arizona. They don't even have good doctors down there. And so she came down, and the following weekend I proposed to her, which was a 4-week period of courtship. And it seemed very natural to do that. And we were married about 2 months thereafter.
So let's just do the math. Blind date.
Yeah.
You say at the end of it, I'm coming to LA next weekend again.
Well, she had dates.
And
She had
exactly. The story says she had plans, and you said, "We'll cancel them." She says, "This guy's got some bravado." We canceled the plans. We went out one weekend there, one weekend, and you proposed, and you were married 5 weeks later.
Yeah. It was...
And by the way, this was not a eloping, whatever. This is a 250-person lavish, we'll need to probably drop some of these pictures into the show notes, because the pictures of this literally looks like Cary Grant and, Audrey Hepburn. Well, I wasn't there, but the pictures certainly spoke to it. So what was your impression of Mom outside of her sense of humor? What was it about it where you're just like, wow, this feels like home?
Well, her openness. Yeah. I mean, she was real. I mean, in all honesty, I always disdained people, let's say, who had gone to Beverly Hills High School, whose daddy bought them a convertible when they were 16, and they had the best that life could offer, more than the best, and either wanted to expect that from the rest of her life, or that's the way she was, And if anything, Arlene was very derisive about her classmates and about those who were pampered and all that, and she didn't want anything to do with it. As a matter of fact, her dad bought her a fur coat, and she never wore it. She just, she was authentic and real.
That's true.
And that was kind of a breath of fresh air from other people that I had met.
And the bridges that you met on were so interesting because you've got a kid from St. John, Missouri, a girl from Beverly Hills,
You got it.
artist, you've got a lawyer,
Midwesterner.
You've got these juxtapositions where you're like, well, that doesn't make sense, but it completely made sense. And then the thing that I would love to hear you speak to is how you invited each other and ignited each other into each other's worlds. Like, I love the fact that as a child, witnessing that you, at least from a child's lens, my observation, saw her as a muse to bring you into the arts, and you, you began to appreciate that. The fact that Mom had never gone camping before, and I love the fact that I've heard you say to Jessica and myself in the past, where you're like, she was game. She was game for a good time. She was game to say yes. She was good to go.
Well, and when she went, she didn't complain about when is this going to be over. When are we going home? So it was. I never had the feeling that she was. I was in effect putting her into situations that were not an experience for her that she didn't enjoy, and she got to the point where she never initiated it, but she certainly was a willing companion. Yeah. And she did get into the art world, and that was an educational experience for me. So we were constantly learning from each other and being open to new experiences. How about when you were growing up, did you feel that you were being exposed to new experiences all the time?
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like, whether it's true or not, I feel like before I could walk, I was digging around in the dirt on the kibbutz, or like we were on the riverbank, and I feel like we were, in many ways.
Did you feel that was just natural? I mean, that's what kids do, or were you extraordinary?
It felt very natural, and I would say that was, you definitely took on that role of being the Scult camp counselor, and camp was called life. I mean, you were the planner. You brought us to places, and it was it always was interesting and a gift, and that certainly was one of the things. Yeah.
Well, I whether it's intuitive or whatever, but I look back on the experience I had with my father, and my father's father died when he was 8, so he really never had a relationship with a father. And so when he had me, the thing that my father used to love to do was go bowling and not spend much time outside.
Yeah.
He worked his ass off all his life, and seriously, and so when he was looking for relaxation, entertainment, he went bowling, and so if I wanted to see him or be around him, I remember going off to the bowling alley and sitting there watching him bowl because I wasn't physically able to pick up a ball and throw it. And so when I started having kids, I realized that I I wanted to be around them. Frankly, for me, it was a learning experience because I learned as much or more from you as you learned from me. And so that energized me to want to do that. And when I sit around the table and talk to people of my age, and they said, "Gee, I really wish I had spent more time with my kids. I love golf and playing." And when I got home, I was tired and, took a nap and all that. And but I looking back on it, I think I didn't spend enough time with my kids. I never felt that. And the vacations we took were hardly ever Arlene and myself alone. We did take several, but we took a multitude with you to give you guys new experience, and for us as a family to have the experience.
Yeah, for me, it's almost like I'd call it a loving experience. Like, yes, it was learning, but you were just you had this, again, this resolve and this drive that came naturally, but you wanted to create the container for the family to thrive, and you poured yourself into it. And it's interesting. We do things oftentimes from we follow the lead of things that we either receive from our parents or that we didn't receive from our parents or from the world.
Right.
You can either just mirror what's happening to you, or you can say like, wow, that's not working for me.
Right.
And I remember a story that you and I were on a ski trip, and it was, it's always challenging, at least in my experience, for us to have like deep conversations as a full family, but I would have deep conversations with you one-on-one or mom one-on-one, and ultimately as we grew back together, Jessica one-on-one. But I remember a story of you and I going on a ski trip together, and we're driving, and it's really snowing hard, and you're very concentrating on the road. We were also in deep conversation, and you told me the story that your father wrote you a letter at age 40, and it was the first time he ever told you that he loved you. And he never expressed it verbally. So you never heard from your father, not once. I love you, and you just inferred, yeah, he's proud of me, but he never said it. And so, again, to this beautiful notion of we either learn from what we see or what we don't see, or what we receive or what we don't receive. And so I there was not a moment in a salutation of saying, goodbye, whether I'm on the phone with you from school or going out to play, or you wouldn't take me and look me right in the eye and say, I love you.
Yeah, and that was perhaps a little bit over the top. Because
for who?
Well, yeah, enough is enough.
Really?
And there were times I didn't really love you hardly. So,
well, I kicking, dragging, and screaming into this podcast right now, so maybe he doesn't love me right now.
No, I'm enjoying it immensely.
Okay.
I'm learning. I'm even learning more about you.
Listen, you're
so don't blush.
I'm here for the questions and the answers. Okay, friends, you know how they say kids say the funniest things? Well, I got to tell you, adults sometimes say the funniest things as well when they wear one golden thread. Some of my favorite quotes is somebody saying that they feel like they're making love to themselves without touching themselves. Real. Somebody else said they feel like they're wearing their wizard armor. Others have said they feel like they hit the gym without needing to hit the gym. Listen, whatever you say, whatever you feel, this is your journey. I'm just here to be an act of service and an offering to the world for you to go hug yourself. No, seriously, go hug yourself. One golden thread at a time. Special code at checkout, 22% off. Use code Drops of Gold. You are golden. We are all connected. Better together. Go hug yourself. I would love to hear you speak about this chapter that we just went through because it really was. Oh man, it's even just talking about it. It's just everything comes rushing back. But for me, it comes rushing back with so much like softness, and not sadness, which is the chapter that we just endured with Mom. You know, your beloved, and for those that haven't followed my journey of what I've shared, you know, online. Arlene Mort Scult peacefully transitioned from a 7-year Alzheimer's journey, March 10th, 2020. Ironically enough, 2 days before COVID got real, so we actually had the opportunity to be with her versus not be with her.
That's true.
I had, you know, quite the extraordinary life-defining moment of circumstances were such that I, you know, was in the room with her, you know, during those last hours. But the 7 years was such a. It started out as for I can only speak for myself. It started out as such a hardship, and I think Jessica, you know, processed through it faster in terms of coming to peace with it. But I remember the moment that I truly softened in to not just coming at peace with it, but having a perspective where truly, like this notion of which is going to touch us all, Alzheimer's, dementia. You know, it is spreading in this world. I'll never forget. You called me, and I was still feeling so much gut wrenching inside myself of my mom isn't my mom, and you told me, you said, you know, I just got back from the doctors, and I asked him for a medical diagnosis, and what you shared with me, like, forever just like melted me into a state of being which I continue into. The doctor said, you said that he said, I don't have a medical diagnosis for your wife, but I do have a personal observation, is that her waking state is inner peace, and the only emotion that she seems to be obtaining is spark joy. And that was such a potent moment to come into a deeper version of it's not what no longer is, it's about what is right now.
Right.
And coming into this, like the beauty. I mean, my relationship continues with my mother. My relationship for those last 2.5, 3 years was never more present, more loving, more both directions. It's just a simple squeeze of a wrist. You can communicate. And I think back to the moment of you know, and what and how you gifted so much, and yet you were doing it as much for yourself as you were for her. And so I'd love to hear, you know, you share like what that was like for you and what that is like for you now, because of course there's a missing of somebody who's no longer with us that, you know, we all love dearly. And that poem that we read at her funeral, you know, is profound. You know, I hear her laughter, mm-hmm. and I hear her puns, and I see her creativity and the colors of the clothing that I make even. So it's I'd love to hear. That's where I am and where I was and where I continue to be, and I'd love to hear you share how it's going for you.
Well, it's sort of two phases. One is during the incident, 3 phases. One was learning of the fact that she had Alzheimer's, not dementia, but there's a particular area of dementia called Alzheimer's. There's also Lewy body and other things, which I didn't. None of us knew anything about.
Yeah.
And we went through an analysis with Arlene. I mean, she was going through an initial period where you'd ask her, like, what's 2 plus 2? Or I was trying to explain something about a financial transaction, and she couldn't get it. And then she was getting lost. You remember, in various airports, which are confusing anyway, but so there was an indication there was something going on. And so when we went to the doctor, he suggested that we go to a specialist, and it was this doctor who spent some time with Arlene and then spent some time with us, and it was apparent that she was at the very beginning stages of Alzheimer's. And so I said to her, because she was crying, and I said, well, Arlene, I don't know what you're crying about, because, we're in this together, and you'll see to it. You're not going to be deserted. We will be there for you. And so after that, along the way, as Arlene began to have further symptoms, I was doing all the studying I could do to see what was going on in this particular field, which was really nothing. Everybody had a different experience. Sometimes it was constant agitation. Sometimes it was having an absolute emotional breakdown. I mean, it's all kinds of things. And we kind of, I said, Arlene, we got to work on this together. And whatever your feelings are, you've got to share them. And so she did. And she never, throughout that entire period, ever had high-level anxiety. We did a lot of things. For example, I introduced her to music, guitar music, where she could sing songs. She never sang them in her life, like Coming Around the Mountain and things like that. And she got into it and looked forward to the person showing up every week with a guitar and singing children's songs. And I saw to it that she had massages, and half the time, and then when she ultimately went into a memory care unit, I saw to it that she also had a side person to be with her. So she kind of thought she was in a spa. And so she never went through periods. I don't know what happened. I don't know what was going on in her mind. I have no idea. But she never displayed any level of anxiety or along the way. And even when she was eating food that had been pureed, she always wanted to know, what is this I'm eating? I tell her, and she says, oh, okay. And that was just it. It was never, I don't want to do that, or I want to get out of here. And so it was a journey that gave me strength to be for her. So it was one of those things, and then she passed away very peacefully, and that was the end of that. As far as I'm concerned, Arlene was near, dear, and to me. I mean, we had our moments. There was even that period that we separated, and she wanted to be the artist that she wanted to be, and she needed her, quote, space, close quote, which I never understood. But I realized through spending time with others, and I formed a little support group of 6 men, all of whom lost their wives in that 12-month period in the place where I live. And that's who I have dinner with every Monday night. So that's what it is, and it's this is a new journey, and I'm kind of learning, I think, what it's like to be without.
I will always remember, because it's one of the most poignant axioms that actually is more like a way to live. When I asked you what it was like for you to, for the last 2.5, 3 years, when she didn't even have the muscle to give you a kiss back, what was it like to be, in a constant state of giving? And it's a very, very powerful thing for, anybody who's listening, everybody who's listening, to think about this notion around giving to, giving and receiving, and am I giving now, am I receiving? And this notion, which I also love about, we forget to receive first before we give. I really appreciate when I asked you what was it like to just give and give and give, and you said there is really no such thing if it's coming with pure intent of giving and receiving. It's just sharing love. And that's what you said that was happening. It was just you were sharing, and Mom was sharing on her way, and you were sharing in your way. Because I think that so many of us can get caught up in this scorekeeping of like, I'm just giving. Well, what am I getting out of this? And I love the fact that you said, well, actually, I was getting a tremendous amount of just joy and pleasure. But there's something that happens with humanity. Oftentimes, when a spouse becomes deceased, that whoever that they were in relationship with, their soul withers with it, and they end up dying shortly thereafter. Versus saying like, I'm going to choose to live. And I really admire, it's one of the things that I admire about you, the way that you've chosen to pour yourself into love and life and learning. And you're actually in your 3rd Saturn return. This is literally like a new chapter of your life, and I love the fact that you've chosen joy instead of just and how does one get there? When they're faced with a something that could be debilitating, and you just you've chosen you've chosen love and you've chosen life.
I don't know. I don't think I went through any metamorphosis where I made a determination to X, Y, Z. I don't have an answer to that. And I think it's one of those things that people have to do for themselves. If you're asking whether you can feel sorry for yourself or something like that, I was thankful for what I had and got, and I think I really haven't thought of it along those lines, and I never thought of it about what am I getting out of this relationship during the time that Arlene had Alzheimer's. As a matter of fact, Actually, I did get a lot out of it, because I learned to live with a person who was not the person that I married, and if I said something and then she couldn't remember it, and I said, well, I just told you that 5 minutes ago. I mean, you can't do things like that, but you accept whatever it is, and it was a learning. So, I did get something out of it. I got something out of it, what it means to live with someone who is afflicted by a terminal disease, and that's and I think the way Arlene handled it probably enabled me to handle it the way I handle it, because she never went through periods of tremendous angst or spasms, emotional spasms, or excitement.
Touch on one other thing before we begin to wind down this amazing Drops of Gold. You said something to me which was pretty stunning to me when we were on your birthday at Crystal Hot Springs. I think that's what it's called. Crystal Hot Springs?
Castle Hot Springs.
Castle Hot Springs.
Yeah.
Cool place, by the way. Shout out. You have always been a fulcrum point of fun. You've always been a catalyst for community. You've always been a funder of philanthropy. Like you are a very interesting leader, and also a center of many things that is elevating and lifting and gifting and community and friends coming together. And yet you shared with me that you see yourself as an outsider, which was a fascinating inner perspective from looking out. And I'd love to hear you speak to that, because like I view you through this extraordinary lens, as do everyone that I know that knows you, who views you in as an icon, not in some hero worship way, but just an icon of bringing people together in an intelligent way that means something. So I just wanted to presence that and hear from your perspective on that subject, because I think that feels like you are very much not on the stage. You are absolutely a key member of the circle.
Well, that's very flattering.
I'm just stating the facts.
Well, I suppose the only fact that I can think of that I had another name. The name that I'm now being called is Mayor of Sagewood.
This is true.
And there's 600 people living there, and it's not that I know all of them, but they seem to know me. Yeah. But it's not because I go around bragging. It's just the fact that I started the hiking club there, even though I'm no longer able to do. Yeah. And then I started what is called a film club, which is a cinema society, where we have extraordinary discussions about issues that provocative films produce. And it's a great feeling of accomplishment and joy. Not that I didn't enjoy my professional life enormously, but these things that I've accomplished and done, where I see other people, chiming in and enjoying it, and encouraging them to come forth and be the head of the pack, so to speak, when I said that I feel like sometimes like an outlier, is because I guess my family moved around a lot. So when I went into high school, I went in as a sophomore, where all the freshmen already had bonded together, and I was an outlier in grade school because I couldn't play baseball. And so it's one of those things where circumstances cause you to be not part of the in group because people grew up that way. So anyway, that's the only aspect of that.
Okay, but then an outlier no longer, because you're it's a beautiful thing to invite yourself to allow yourself to see yourself the way individuals see you, or certainly to receive the way people receive you, and you can choose to see yourself however you choose to see yourself. It's your journey.
Yeah.
I want to just acknowledge what anybody who's listening to this who knows you would be saying. Yes, fuck yes, Mort Scult is you just called yourself the mayor, so there you go.
They did it. I didn't. Yeah.
Question from the Peanut Gallery. We have an audience in this podcast and amazing storytellers and questioners. So what do we got?
Yeah, what's coming up for me is I'm curious to know if you have a favorite version of yourself. Like if there's been like a time that you just felt like most powerful or most happy in your skin, and why?
So the question from Mark Shapiro, is there a time, when was the time that you saw yourself as the favorite version of yourself, most powerful? What was that experience? What was the story behind it, and why?
Well, I think the time that gives you the greatest pleasure is looking at a particular event that, or let's say a group that was formed or whatever it was, that is succeeding beyond my wildest expectations. Not because I did it, but because they did themselves. And they, and if you not incentivize, but you support people, it's amazing what happens because they do it. And then you look back and say, pretty damn good. So that gives me a lot of joy to see something like that succeed. Not because I did it, but because of what happens after. And the way people will latch onto something and carry it to the next level. So that's a great feeling of accomplishment. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. That was so full of wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's me. What would you say is the most?
What's your question?
Jeff is going to repeat it, but what would you say is the most eye-opening or heart-opening thing that your children taught you?
The eye-opening.
What is the most eye-opening or heart-opening thing that your children taught you? Or are teaching you?
Yeah.
To listen. Mostly. And to encourage them to be themselves, and instead of a replica of yourself. Yeah.
I have a moniker. It's not a nickname, but it's a moniker, which is he calls me his number one son, which is cool, and I very much take that to heart. I really appreciate it, even though he only has one son.
Right.
It's still cool to be number one. So
it's good to be modest.
It's
Jeff.
good to be number one.
Yeah, a little modesty. A little modesty does you well.
I don't know how I could be anymore, but yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, I'm very proud of both of my children, what they've accomplished for themselves, far beyond what any expectations I had, or roads, or anything else.
Tell me a story as we're closing up about your favorite moment with your daughter that grew as when she was a child. It could be a trip you took, could be a conversation, could be a time of tumult, it could be a time of triumph.
And what
a story, a moment that you look back on that's heartwarming.
Well, there was one. There was this park in Phoenix. It had an amphitheater, but it was just a park where people went down to. And I think I took Jessica down there when I was doing a lot of photography. And she was in a very joyful mood and was noticing birds in the trees and looking up at even commenting about the leaves. And I was taking some of those pictures and watching the surroundings that she kept noticing in a very joyous way. And I mean, it was just a day. There wasn't anything else going on. It was just a lovely day. And she just absolutely was with it.
I remember this beautiful picture that you took of Jessica running. That was the moment?
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. That picture is iconic. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that actually is one of my favorite things about what you infused and imbued growing up was we had this dark room. And the dark room was where literally you got to witness magic unfolding before your eyes. It was those chemicals of a picture coming into focus.
Mm-hmm.
I grew to love that's this putrid smell of those chemicals because it meant like something magical was going to happen. And that was one of the things that I would also say. You showed up. Basketball games. You showed up. I mean, you took some iconic pictures of me performing at my sports highlights in fifth grade. But
I think you were on the way to the NBA.
Listen, you guys, there's so many stories which we won't tell now. But I went to a child psychiatrist because I was concerned I wasn't going to make the NBA as a undersized Jewish, very average basketball player. But I still clearly confidence was not my issue. I believed it was possible.
I know, but sitting on the bench, you learned a lot.
Yeah, well, I
remember when you went to basketball camp and you came back and you were hot stuff, and I guess it was Michael Fold or somebody like that was your coach and over at the center, and somehow or other he didn't put you in to the games as much as you thought you should be in, and I said to you, Jeff, I said, you learn a lot by getting splinters from the bench.
Okay, that might be the golden mic drop right there. You learn a lot by getting splinters from the bench and then get in the game. Well, Mort Scult, Sporty Morty. What was the other nickname? I can't remember. $3 bill. $3 bill.
Well, that was a confession on my part.
It was quite a confession. Yeah. Well, your proclamation of this has been a pretty good gig. I think the world is better.
So.
Continues to be better with you in it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was not honored with the bestowing of being your son, you would be my dearest friend. So, and you are.
And I love you.
And I love you
even
too.
more.
Same. Are we complete? I feel complete. Is there anything you want to ask me or sayonara off with?
I've learned a lot this afternoon too about you. We'll talk about it later.
Come here. This is the king. This is Mort Scult, living legend. And your legacy is that you are living your legacy.
I hope so, and more so.
And more so. It's a pretty good gig. Mort Scult, thank you for being on Drops of Gold.
All right. I need a drink.
Thank you for joining us on Drops of Gold. We trust you found listening as delightful as we found creating. Now let me tell you, it takes a village to nourish a dream. Big shout outs to One Golden Thread for powering the pod, To co-producers Mark Shapiro, Josh Robertson, and Victory for bringing it all to life. Kat Benzova for her stunning guest portraits, and special thanks to artist Taib for featuring his electrifying new track, Departures. And infinite love to you for your curiosity and commitment to living in your highest vibrational truth. Aho! Here we grow. We are all designed to be reminded we are already golden inside. I'm Jeffscult, wishing you a radically yes fuck yes day. Ashe.